Welcome to Psych Sessions. I am Adam. Some of you may know me as Phi. My friends call me Nature, but you already know that. Now I got my buddy Mark Dreams here. I'll let him introduce himself.
I was just about to say, most people know me as Mark Dreams. And yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about our trip last Tuesday. It was my birthday trip. It was the first time Mark and I have tripped together alone in years. We did trip together back in June with my wife and a buddy, but this was our first time tripping alone again in, like I said, years. And it was an amazing experience. I don't know about you, but I was so calm for a lot of it. I felt like I was on mushrooms.
Right. That first part of it was just so... Just soothing and like just so relaxing. We were actually sitting in these exact chairs and like how they just leaned back, so we was just chill for the first like I don't even know because time was so weird. So like I don't know how long we was like that for, but really up until the trance hit, really.
There was only a couple times throughout the trip where like we got out of the chairs. There was a couple songs that like
get up and dance.
Yeah, there's a couple songs where just like the rhythm and everything of the song, it's like, man, I have to dance to this. I got to let loose on this one. But yeah, we barely moved out of these chairs for like 6 hours. They were so comfortable.
Right. There was this one song though, like, because I'll never forget this. I don't know why, but it like had some like African type vibe to it, but like dance vibe. That happened to be the one that like made my soul just want to get up and dance and move to it and like moving in a way that I wouldn't move normally, like just dancing. I don't know. It was interesting.
If I remember correctly, it was, I think, one of the Savage songs. Can't remember which one, but
right.
I think it was definitely that. So yeah, anyone that wants a comfortable seat to sit in while they trip, I highly suggest one of these anti-gravity chairs. So big topic on the trip was music. We were both just talking about music a lot and getting back into music and doing some music together. I think our styles would vibe really well together.
Right. And it's like my weaknesses are kind of like your strengths and like vice versa. So
Same.
It's like I can just see so much potential, especially when I was just thinking about it while we was tripping and man, yeah.
And it might sound strange too, like when my wife came down in the morning, she was like, "Oh, what'd you guys talk about on your trip?" And I just jokingly responded like, "We were stroking our egos a lot of the trip." But in the last video I made when I was talking about cannabis being psychedelic in that trance, I mentioned the false ego and the true ego. And when I say stroking our egos, I feel like we were just, stating all the good things about who we are and like our strengths and our talents, and not really being egotistical about it, but just like reassuring ourselves like, yeah, we're good at this stuff, man.
Right. Kind of like just acknowledging what is, but that's kind of what made it almost sound ego, is like, it was like, well, we're acknowledging what is, that we are this thing. We are great. We can do, like, it's this thing where it almost felt like we was just empowering ourselves, like, like empowering the true ego, because that false ego kind of gains more strength, over time. So it's like then the real ego kind of gets weak in a sense, and then we start to like kind of lose confidence, I guess, in ourselves type shit. But
that's exactly what I said in the last video I recorded earlier today. How that false ego can creep in and make you lose your confidence, tell you you're not good enough, make you doubt yourself, and I explained how when I got into the trance, I was in the chair and like I was loudly like similar to like an ohm, but just like yelling like no. And I feel like I was trying to like rid myself of that false ego and not allow it to re-enter my psyche. And I even mentioned in the video, I'm surprised the cops didn't get called because it seemed like I was doing it extremely loud.
I mean, yeah, to me you were like, because I had that same thought where I was like, Well, I hope there's no one walking outside because they would think something was up.
Yeah, and there's a bus stop right in front of my house too. So I was like, I don't know what time it was, but if the kids were going to the bus stop or something and there was parents out there, they probably would have been like, "What the fuck is going on in that
Right,
house?"
because it had to have been close to sunrise if it wasn't already
The
sunrise.
sun was definitely starting to come up. I noticed light coming through the windows.
Yeah.
I mentioned in my last video too, like, because you've talked about it, like looking at the ceiling on LSD, how things opened up, and like after that dab, if you remember the very end of the Liquid Stranger set that I had on, there was a part that goes, "Forget your name,
Yep.
forget the people,"
Yep.
and that just kept echoing in my head on repeat. And I mentioned that's why I like ignored Erica when she was like, "Oh, you're just gonna ignore me?"
Right, when she came down. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it was like I had to, like, and then as the Savage set came on, like that face that was in the background, even though that "Forget Your Name, Forget Your People" was done and over, it just kept like playing on repeat in my head. And that face that was on the stage in the background of the Savage set was just like staring at me as I was laying here looking at it. And all of a sudden it began to like open up, and it looked a mix of like digital and I don't even know what other words to put to it besides like digital. And like I explained in the video how like I shot into it, like the whole thing opened up and came at me. And like I went into it and described how like if you watch a sci-fi movie and they're in a spaceship and they go into hyperspace, how the stars are like really long as they're flying by them, and that's what everything looked like.
Mm.
And I forgot to mention in my last video, like before I got to what I called heaven, heaven being like this music festival that never ends, I felt like I hit a void temporarily. Like before I got there, there was like nothing. It was just like this complete emptiness, but I was aware of it. It was an awareness that was in this nothingness. And it was kind of peaceful and beautiful.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, when I felt like I was in heaven, the music festival that never ends, I was sitting here, thinking to myself, like, oh shit, I really did it this time. Like, I lost it. And
Well, because what's interesting is because this is when you was in the trance, right?
this is right before I got up and started dancing around.
Right. Okay. So like, it's just so interesting because the way like part of it's like I'm the whole experience, right? I don't know why, but every time like I got caught into staring at the ceiling for a second, right? And it's like it started opening up very similar to like DMT space, right? I like to kind of say where it's almost like DMT space is like leaking in to here.
That's kind of how it looked when the TV opened up and came at me.
Right. So like when you said the festival that never end, it reminded me of a DMT trip I had once where like there was this I popped into some like festival with all these light beams and well I say festival, but like that was the vibe. It was just a vibe of all these light beams dancing around, and it had the vibe of like there was a stage or something that they was like kind of looking towards, kind of like you would with a stage and like whatever and kind of like dancing. But like it was just that thing, and it's just really interesting how LSD, DMT, mushrooms, ayahuasca, like they're all kind of opening to a very similar thing. Because every time I look into the ceiling and the ceiling actually opens up, it is a DMT-esque place.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's opening up to a certain type of place like that. Like when you was in the trance, did it like did like was it more than just the festival thing, or like what was?
So it was only the festival thing when I was sitting in the chair. When I got up and started dancing around, it literally felt like I was rearranging the matrix of my own life. Like, kind of almost like outside of time and space. Like, I was like taking these things I wanted to happen and I was like placing them in my timeline. Like, the idea of manifestation, like I finally believed I could do these things. So then as I was dancing around, it's like I was seeing my timeline in life and saying, okay, I want this to happen, so I'm going to put it here. I want this to happen, so I'm going to put it here. It's sometimes the trance is very hard to describe, but
Right, because even from my perspective, like, because it's hard to explain, like, because someone watching would be like
Mhm.
trance, like, it's so hard to explain because I see it happen, right? And
Mhm.
it's literally like, I don't know, we was in the trip talking, something happened, went to do a dab, you did a dab, and then right after that, like, you started getting into the trance. Like, at first, like, kind of started like shaking, like, I could feel
Yeah.
like almost like shaking, like, and my first thought was like, I hope he's good, like, because shaking like that, I'm like, well, damn, seizure type shaking. But
to
then you kind of started making these noises, and then I was like, okay, no, no, he's going into this trance.
Yeah, to me, it almost felt like when I was shaking that I was gonna like, it's like my soul was about to vibrate right out of my body.
Mm.
Um, like I explained too in the last video how when I was like yelling no, like I felt like I was gonna create a black hole. The vibrations felt so strong.
Mm.
Like I could feel it through my whole being. I felt like I was gonna bring the house down with the vibrations, which I'm sure was just, enhanced from what we did. But um yeah, that was the first time I ever went into the shaking thing. I'm still not sure what that was,
Right.
but
But no, like, because from there, it went from that to then, like, these noises, kind of like you started, like, throat
mm-hmm.
singing, but, and then, like, started getting loud. And then it reminded me of this one video I seen of these men going to a man's retreat where they go to this waterfall and then they all scream at the top of their lungs at this waterfall.
Yeah, I
Because,
think I've
like,
seen that video.
because you started like screaming kind of in that way where it was like it almost, to me, it seemed like a release or like a
Mm-hmm.
purge of this whatever you were
The
purging.
false ego is what I felt
Right.
like I was purging, like telling it like, no, you are no longer in control.
Right.
Um, it's strange. Normally I hit the trance in the peak of the LSD experience, but like this whole trip was just like so calm and relaxing. I feel like I definitely needed that kind of relaxation, because it's been a while since I've had a trip that was just that relaxing where I felt that loose. But then, like, as soon as that dab took hold, I remember I even went and poured a cup of coffee, and then I never drank it. Like, I sat down in the chair and just took off. Like, I'm glad you brought up the DMT thing because in the last video, I forgot to mention that it did feel like I was blasting off in some DMT kind of manner. I think I forgot to mention that.
Mm.
I did mention how I thought the face looked kind of like a DMT entity face, like how it was like symmetrical everywhere. And
Right.
um, so I wanted to ask you, like, what pulled you into the trance with me? Because, like, I remember you getting up and starting to dance around with me.
So it feels like a pull, like, so
Mm-hmm.
you was doing the thing, right, and then you started getting up and like kind of just dancing around or whatever. And I don't know how to explain because it was more than just dancing, like you were like spinning around, dancing
Mm-hmm.
around, chanting around, like at points you was chanting in, like, I guess you can call it the light language or like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But as you were doing that for a little while, I got caught into just like staring at the ceiling. And like, so like I got stuck for a second, so I'm just staring. And then it's like I could feel, like, that was like before I was really looking at you. It's like I could feel you, or like feel a slight pull, kind of like gravity. Like, it reminds me of
Okay.
gravity, how like how if a planet, or if like an object gets close enough to the planet, you'd be able to feel the pull of gravity.
Mm-hmm.
And but if the object isn't close enough, it would just feel the pull, but it won't get pulled into it. So it was like that, where I could feel the pull and just feel the pull, and it's like my mind started going more into a meditative, um I don't want to say blank state, but like something like that when I would feel the pull.
Mm-hmm.
So then eventually the pull kind of got so strong that I'm just like, it was mixed with the pull, mixed with, there was a song playing that just had that certain type of thing
Mm-hmm.
to get me to move. So then I got up and started moving to that thing. But then as I was vibing to that thing, it's like consciously in the beginning, I knew that I got up to that thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then the more I get into it, or the more, then I start chanting an elf, and then we start singing like the same type shit. Like, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to explain it, but it's like we were so on sync with singing the same type thing that we would just sing this shit together. And once like we got in sync with it, it's like that's when like it just hit. Like I'm in this thing with you at that
It's almost
point.
like you just become a puppet to
Yeah.
the energy that's pulling you.
Yeah, and then it's like okay, and then you just jam into the thing and then you kind of just let it take you. And like, I don't know what.
I like how you described it as like gravity pulling you, because I've never really described it like that before. Because like when the trance starts, it's like if I feel that pull and I don't get up and start dancing to it, I actually start to get really anxious and I feel uncomfortable.
Mm.
And uh, it used to be like that a couple years back as the trance was hitting, where like back in September when I tripped with Erica and our other friend. I try not to mention his name for certain reasons.
Right, right.
But that one was like the quickest I ever got into the trance. Like as soon as I felt it, I got up and started dancing.
Mm.
And I'm definitely gonna make a video about the revelation I had on that trip. But that's for another time.
Word.
I mentioned too in the video I made earlier how like my living room it's got some decent space, but it's not super big.
Right.
And like I said how like when we were dancing around, we never once collided. Like even not looking at each other, I said it's like I could just feel where you were in the room at all times.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I feel you.
I'm trying to recall some of the chants and noises I was doing. One that's stuck with me in my head. It was the beep bop beep ba-doo, beep bop beep ba-doo. I'm sure you remember that one.
Yeah.
And like so there's a loop in my house where I can go out this way and then go around into this hallway and come out the other way. And I remember several times, it's like every time I came through the loop, I was chanting in like a different language that went along with the beat.
Like it was like you went from French to German to Russian, but then it's like your accent, like you would have an accent that's going with it too. It was like, yeah.
So there was a point too when I was sitting in this chair, and I forgot to mention it in my last video, when I was yelling no. It felt like if my higher self was like an entity, or like for all intents and purposes like a Hindu god. It's like imagine that energy was trying to take form in this body. It's almost like my higher self was trying to completely take over. And that might sound weird. I don't want it to sound like a possession in any way, like anything demonic or anything like that. I'm still trying to make
something like it, but good.
Yeah, like I'm still trying to make sense of that. Like it was.
I've had things like that on trips too, where it's like the higher self, because everyone kind of knows the idea of the higher self, and it's like kind of like embodying, like trying to embody the higher self, like
And I feel like it was like that thing and the false ego that were like trying to like fight.
Almost like the false egos, like, yo, I'm inhabiting this thing, and like the higher self's like, bro, get the fuck out so I can move in.
Yes, and I think that's why it was like after I was like screaming no that I finally got up and started dancing around, because it was like that higher self took over my actual ego and was like, yep, this is my body. You are no longer welcome here in my body and in my psyche, so get lost.
Right.
I still feel bad for ignoring Erica when she was like, "You're just gonna ignore me," but I know she gets it,
right?
Because I think that's one reason, and I mentioned in the video why I've had trouble breaking through on DMT, because I do have trouble letting go, especially of her, because I love her to death, and it's the idea that like, oh my God, what if I don't come back from this trip? I'll never see her again.
Right. No, right. That I used to do that with my daughter, where it's like, and even now, like I still would do that. Like if I was to do DMT right now, that would be the thought that's like the thing holding me back from wanting to let go. You know, it's like, well, I know I need to let go if I want to have that experience, but if I don't want to let go, then it's like, that's another thing. On the trip, you know how we would talk about DMT and like we was kind of like, I guess you could say, flirting with the idea of like smoking the DMT, and like I done scared myself away from smoking the DMT because like I kind of reminded myself of it, because every time it's like, if I'm on LSD and like we start talking about DMT, it's like I can see it. Like I can see the trips I've had, the DMT trips I've had, the thing, the this. So it's like if I talk about it while I'm tripping, I automatically get reminded of it. And it's like, it kind of put that fear in me because the last DMT trip I had was, this being kind of forcing, like, kind of like putting me up like a child, like, you need to get your shit right type shit.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I've kind of been hesitant to smoke DMT because I'm like, I know I've gotten my shit right since then, but, like, it's that thing where it's always in the back of my mind, well, I need to get my shit right first before I just go diving into the other dimensions and that shit. So, like, it's like I kind of had this weird parent fear. Like when I don't know. So I was, like, when a child does something and they don't want their parent to know, and then they're, like, worried, so then they know the
Mm-hmm.
parent knows, and then they go home and they're all scared and, like, whatever. It was that thing where it's like, every time we would talk about the DMT, I would get that fear, like, if I smoke the DMT, am I gonna get the parent that's like, you whatever, or am I gonna get the parent that's like, hey, I'm proud of you, fuck yeah. So it's like I had those thoughts going through my mind while we was talking about it, and it was like, oh man, maybe I just won't do the DMT right now.
I was very keen on smoking the DMT later in the day because I explained in my last video how, like, I was in this trance for like 3 hours, which is strange that it kept me there that long because, like, you think normally the high from cannabis only lasts like an hour, two tops. And we were already completely down from the trip, and I feel like it sent me higher than the trip did.
Mm.
And I said how, like, after I finally got done running around and dancing around, I got on the floor real quick, stretched, and then just passed out for a couple hours and took a nap. And then I said that you left to go do something real quick, came back, and then me, my wife, Mark, and then another one of our friends, we introduced him to MDMA for the first time that day. Mark stayed for the first dose, and then he had to dip out before we redosed with our friend. And I was later in the evening going to smoke the DMT, but then we all did like little 25, 30 milligram bumps of ketamine as well, because I don't know, there's something very magical about a small bump of ketamine on the come down of MDMA. It helps with like any of the come down anxiety or jitters that you start to get, and it just makes everything kind of euphoric and calm again. But what's weird is I got into a trance laying on that couch after just the 25 milligram bump of ketamine.
What do you mean?
Like, I was just sitting on the couch, like, doing this thing with my hands, and was just, like, completely tranced out as Erica and our other friend were talking. And it's funny because, like, our one friend was, like, asking questions or saying things, and it's like I had, again, channeled my higher self and was just, without even thinking about anything, any question he had, just, like, answering it, like, perfectly. Like, it just came, and, like, the universe was just giving me the answer to feed to him that he was looking for. But I think that's where I may have messed up and not been able to do the ketamine or the DMT. Because after the ketamine wore off, I then went and did another small dab. And there was an anti-gravity chair there and one here. And I ended up passing out in the anti-gravity chair, probably just from being exhausted from everything. Erica even tried to wake me up to get me to go upstairs to go to bed. And I popped up and I was like, no, I got to smoke the DMT. And she's like, no, you're not. You're going to go back to sleep. I was like, no, I'm going to smoke that. And she went upstairs, and sure as shit, I fell right back asleep. And then all of a sudden I woke up. It was like 2:30 in the morning. I was sleeping in that chair. Our other friend was sleeping in the other anti-gravity chair here. And that's when I was just like, yeah, I'm too tired to smoke that. And then I had thought about smoking it the next day after I got home from bowling, and just decided to do a dab instead. It's like, as you were talking, like this fear creeping in, I think that's what happened. Like, I was so open the first day, I was ready to do it. I was like, yeah, there's no fear here. I'm ready to go. But then the next day, after everything had worn off out of my system, I felt like that slight fear, and I didn't want to go into it with a fear. So I just decided to do a dab and then meditate in the anti-gravity chair the next night.
It's funny with DMT. It's like, no matter what, I feel like I always go into it with a fear, because like, I don't know why. It doesn't matter how many times you do it. You'll, like, it's just, you're terrified. Like, I'm terrified every time. Like, it's beyond fear almost. Like it's like a terrified feeling. But like, it's like, as soon as I have the idea, well, I need to smoke the DMT, it's almost like I just need to smoke the DMT and not have the idea. Like I don't know how to explain it. Just like, not necessarily think about it. Just, if I have it, it's there. then I'll smoke it. But like, you know,
Thinking can be dangerous sometimes. That
that's real.
that
Yeah,
idea has come across on so many trips that like
you can kind of think yourself into a position where you're like, oh no, never mind. It's like you want to do something, you
yup,
can think yourself, oh no, never mind,
you can
or
think yourself into a state of fear, a state of panic or
a
anxiety,
state of, well, I can't do this.
a state of depression in day-to-day life. So that's one thing I've been working on a lot, especially since the September 21st trip, is learning to either keep my mind clear in a meditative state day to day, or if those thoughts that are dangerous to me start creeping in, catch them quickly, take a deep breath, and re-clear my mind. It's if you can't learn to use your thoughts properly, then just try not to think at all, which is obviously a lot easier said than done. Um, like like I brought up to you on the trip, how do you explain to
Bro.
somebody how you control your mind and your
Yeah,
thoughts?
because the way you asked the question was like truly like you was like asking it, but then I truly thought like, bro, that was such a great question because I can't explain. Like I can tell you,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you just gotta silence the mind for a little bit. So if you're going through this problem, just step back. And it's like, yeah, but what do you do actually in your mind? How could
Yeah.
you explain what you're actually doing in your mind to someone so then they can be like, oh, okay, no.
The best way I've come to how I've been able to clear my mind is like it's like I try to focus all my mental energy or electricity or whatever it is in like my third eye. And I sometimes try to envision like I'm like the Buddha meditating in like this temple here
In
in
the
my
mind.
third eye chakra. And another thing too, since this last trip that I've been doing a lot in my car while I'm delivering pizza, or even while I'm in the store, I've been whistling a lot, humming a lot, and in my car, I don't do it in the store as much, but like in my car, I've been making like the beatboxing noises like I was on the trip where I'm just like rip ba beep bop boom ba bop bop eep bop boom ba and like it's almost hard for me to think when I'm whistling, humming, or doing that.
That's a great that's a great way to say it because I said something like that to someone once about like um I do a lot of oming meditation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like so like the typical om type shit. And I like it because like there's different types of ohms. There's Rom, there's Ram, there's Lam, there's Om, and all of them like produce slightly different frequencies, and you can kind of feel the differences.
Mm-hmm.
But like with those frequencies, like with the Om, it's like fuck. I completely forget where I was going with that.
You're
What did
talking
you
about
just
the
say?
different frequencies with the ohm.
What did you say?
I was talking about how I've been whistling, humming, and then like kind of like making like
Oh,
the
that. So
beatbox
like,
noises.
cause with the oming meditation, like you're not thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole time you're like if you do it for 2 minutes, just an oming meditation, or if you can do 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes where you didn't think one thought. You were
Mm-hmm.
completely in the om, because that's the only thing you are thinking. Because as you're doing the om, you don't have time to think,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I used to do that like in my head. So it's like if I wanted to try to like not think, I would om, but not really. Like just om in my head, where it's like I would take a second just to clear my mind. I'd just do an om in my head. So then it's like all I'm thinking in my head is om. And it's just a good way to like silence the mind. Cause like it reminds me of like when you're making music, if you're like making a song, the melodies are in your head,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily words. So it's like, we think too much words where it's like we can think it in different ways, right? That can kind of like help us, like look at a situation differently or whatever, or look at a trip differently or the
Mm-hmm.
problem or whatever.
As soon as you said melody, this is how my ADHD brain works. You said, the melodies in your head, and immediately my brain's like, "Shawty like a melody in my head."
Fuck yeah.
So the throat singing too, like so when I was in the trances in the past, I used to do different like omings at different frequencies and stuff. This was the first trip that I've ever like throat sang
Mm.
while I've held like an ohm, because
Bro, you was hitting the
Yeah.
perfect frequencies. I don't know how to explain it. But
So last month I watched a video on YouTube on how to throat sing, and I've been practicing in my car while delivering food, and maybe I'll try to do it here. It's funny because when I first tried to do it for Mark on the trip, I couldn't do it. And I had to tell myself, hey, quit being a little bitch, man. Quit being a pussy. Get that fear out of your mind and just do it. So, like, the way I learned through this YouTube video was, like, you just hold the tone, and then you make, like, the motorcycle noise with your throat, and then you mix those two together. So it's like... And there's something about that when you're on a trip. That's probably, I'm going to have to turn that down when I edit it. That looks loud.
But it still looks good, though.
So there's, and you know, I'm not the greatest at it yet. You got to practice more, but like there's something about how that resonates in your body on a trip. It just...
I don't know if you've ever seen this documentary. It's a Terrence McKenna. It's like a YouTube documentary. But when Terrence and Dennis went down to La Chivera, and Dennis kind of lost his mind for like 2 weeks or so, whatever. Terrence was talking about, he was making a sound that was very similar to that, but it's just so interesting that he was on mushrooms and like we was on, you know, L, but still that sound is so similar where it's like when you was doing that sound, bro, I was in the chair and it felt like I was just staring at the ceiling, but like the sound itself would open the ceiling. Like I don't know how to explain. It's not like the ceiling open, but like the psychedelic visuals in the ceiling would open up more, and like you can. It's like they started like, not sucking me up into them, but like I just kind of got stuck. And as you would make that noise, I was completely stuck into it, and I could see the visuals start to open up into like these like cathedral, like church looking things or whatever. But then when you would stop, they would slowly like fade back away.
Interesting.
And it was like, yeah, it was interesting because then it was also like it kind of locked me in my body for a second. Like that's when one of the first times where I started getting really pulled into the trance is when you started making that noise, and I completely, like, my body was like locked as I was staring at the ceiling as it was happening, and it was just like, yeah, it was interesting.
Sound has always, in my opinion, been an important thing on LSD. That's why I take days and days finding songs that could possibly go good with the trip, and then like the last 2-3 days before the trip, I create a whole list where I've got, you know, the pre-come up music, which is usually a little heavier, get me a little hype, ready to go, and then the come up music, and then there's like the music on the plateau. A lot of the times I'll have the music kind of go like up and down from more upbeat to kind of mid, and then like chill, and then rise back up. This time I kept a lot of the upbeat stuff, and then as the trip went further and further, the calm stuff.
That's another thing that like you do differently than I've ever seen, but you do it so well. You put a lot of time into the playlist of the music. So like, because I agree, almost every LSD trip I've had, there's always music playing. Sometimes I might sit in silence, like for a little bit if I intentionally want to, but like it's almost like you can curate the entire trip with the playlist. So like you're able to, and I don't know how you do it, because like I get it, because I like kind of do the same thing, but I just quickly put some random psychedelic music on or whatever and just let it vibe out. But the way you do it is you're so like you want this for this amount of hours, and like you know when the peak is gonna be, so you're like, okay, I want this type of songs for the peak, and you know when the come down's gonna be, so you're like, oh, I want these type of songs for the come down, and like that definitely adds to the experience. Like it makes the trips that I have with you different. Like even though like I still have trips, you know, alone or whatever, but it makes it like a different experience. I don't know how to explain it, but it definitely adds to the trip.
So I think I started, it was I think in 2018. Maybe actually no, I'm going back. It was like 2016 I started like putting like lists together, like finding different playlists to play music, and it just slowly started progressing from there. You know, there's a couple times in the past few years where like there was some songs where it's like, nah, this isn't vibing. I used to put on like DJ mixes sometimes, where that way I'd only have to find like 4 DJ sets to play through the plateau, and then all of a sudden it shifted to, no, I'm gonna sit here and find 6 hours of music for us to listen to through the experience, and then the come down is now like the DJ sets. But yeah, it's like as the years went on, they progressed and progressed, and now it's like every trip list that I set up is just like perfect. It goes along with the trip so well. And I've got these playlists saved on this YouTube, and they're private, but maybe I'll make the playlists
that'd be
public
awesome.
and then rename them just like Music to Trip 2 Volume 1, 2, and all the way up, and like put the year that I made the list as well. And that way, if there's anybody out there that wants a good playlist to listen to while they're tripping, that's only if you're really into like dubstep, global bass,
Right.
you know, the kind of music
You have
that
to
I'm
like
into.
that
Yeah,
style
you
of
definitely
music.
got to like that style of music for sure.
But if you love that style of music, it definitely adds to the trip. Like,
Oh,
for
for
real.
sure. There was even one list. I want to say it was August of 2023. I made a list called "The Journey Through Sound," and man, that was the first time I actually ever headbanged on a trip. Like just
You
fucking
headbanged a little bit while
raging.
we was tripping.
I did. There was a new song that was on this list from Ganja White Knight and Wooly that was recently released, and like the song it's both beautiful and heavy. And like that was the first song I think that made me get up, and I was just like, yeah, I gotta dance. I let my hair down and was just fucking jamming out to it. And I don't know, there's a really interesting feeling you get headbanging on LSD. It's like if there's any rage in your system, that definitely helps
It's like a purge.
get it out.
Like I guess like
Yeah.
everything kind of is like a purge, where you're just letting the energy move.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, because you said there was at one point when I was getting into the trance that it sounded like I was gonna throw up.
Yeah.
Was that before or after I started doing like the throat singing and yelling no? If I remember correctly, it was before.
It was before, because you were still sitting there. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I'm wondering if that was like,
Yeah, that was during the time while I was staring at the thing when the thing
Mhm.
opened up. Yeah.
so I've always said like when I do the ohms or like this time the throat singing, which I feel like resonated through my whole aura even more. I feel like in a way it was like that became the purge instead of actually like throwing up the purge. It was that to like if there was any negative energy within my aura that came from this false ego we were talking about, that was literally like forcing it out of my system. Like it was just like shaking it out of my system. And now that I'm thinking back on it, I'm wondering if that's what the shaking was. Like
Right.
it's almost like this false ego was fighting to hang on, and it was just like all of a sudden my higher self was like, no sir, you are no longer welcome here, you are not hanging on, get the fuck out. And I did what I had to do in that moment to get it out.
Right.
Now it's just a daily practice to keep it away, because I feel like it's not just like you have this moment and oh cool, I'm healed forever now. Like
Right.
it's a daily practice. Like that's why they call it spiritual practice. You know, you have to practice these things daily to keep that negativity away and to feel at your best and the most connected with your higher self. I hate the cold weather. I can't stand the cold weather. And this morning when I woke up, it was 31 degrees. But I still went for my walk. So sober October, I started going for a morning walk every morning through the cemetery that's near my house. And all of a sudden now, like October's over, and it's like I wake up and it's like an addiction now. It's like I have to go for my walk to start the day. That and I'll throw the shout out to Andrew Huberman. I watched a video of him talking about not drinking caffeine for the first 90 minutes to 2 hours you're awake in the morning. So that's why I go take my walk. I throw in a headphone, listen to, you know, some heavy music, like, you know, Ray Volpe's great. I joke with some people, yeah, who needs coffee in the morning when you got Ray Volpe? I still need coffee afterwards, but like that kind of wakes me up along with the walk and helps me just clear my mind and get my mind right for the day. And it's like I wake up now and I have to do it. So like even this morning, there was like that voice in my head that was like, nah, dude, it's too cold. You don't want to go out there. And I was just like, nope, we're going for the walk, man. You got to feel good. I woke up feeling a little anxious and stressed. Work was a little stressful last night, annoyed the hell out of me. And it's like I knew I had to go for that walk to get my mind right this morning. Otherwise, I was just going to be dwelling on how work went last night. Because it's like, I'm always like, man, I can't wait to quit this job. But the money is nice, so I stay, even though I hate that feeling. I feel like I'm selling my soul for money. But it's the best option I have right now to, pay all the bills. And, my wife doesn't have to work because I make enough. Even though she is looking for a job through the winter. She's bored sitting at home now, so she's looking for something temporarily. But yeah, definitely when you find things that work for you to make you feel better as a spiritual practice, to make you feel just more mentally centered, more connected to your higher self, definitely do it every day.
Right.
And like I commented on your post earlier, don't try. I can't remember where I heard the quote, but trying is an excuse for failure. And then the Yoda quote, there's no trying, only doing, ties right into it. Like,
right, because if you're not doing the thing, then you're not even really trying anyways. Right.
Yep. The next thing I got to do continuously, I've slowed down a little bit since Sober October got over, is my squats, push-ups, working out. Like I'm still going for my morning walk, but I got to add more time into that, come back from my walk and do like a small workout to feel better. Got to admit to myself, you've been a little lazy, Adam. You got to get on that. So
I had to do that same thing.
Yep.
Like I've definitely, over the past year or two, like I've been really good with it, but over the past month, I haven't worked out in a month. So like after the trip, I finally had a workout. Like I think it was 2 days after the trip, I finally had a good workout. And then ever since then, I've been slowly getting back into it. Because, like, it was an addiction. To me, it was like an addiction or just kind of part of life where, like, maybe I'll just drop down and do 50 push-ups. Just randomly, just randomly, whatever. Or if I walk through my door, because I do door pull-ups, so I'll do pull-ups on my door. So it's like if I'm just walking to go into the kitchen, I would just, let me just do 5 or 10 door pull-ups real quick. Like, just that thing, I got out of doing that, and getting out of doing that, then I got out of doing the real workouts, and then I just got too comfortable not doing anything. I was at my mom's for like 3 weeks, and then we had the trip, then we had this, and I was like, well, so then I had to get back into it, because like, I just started feeling, I'm still in shape. Like it's not like I was gonna get out of shape necessarily, but I just started feeling like it's good for the mind as well. Like it helps the mind. I seen this study or something about when this chick was talking about how like working out, like basically pumping the muscles helps pump some certain chemical to the brain or whatever. So it actually does kind of.
Pretty sure working out helps release dopamine naturally as well.
Yeah.
When you get a good workout in, which is why I want to take my morning walks from morning walks to morning runs. Because I know I mentioned.
Bro, I thought that when you was tripping and you was running around the loop the whole time, I was like, bro, you can do that, bro. You can definitely do the morning runs.
I probably ran at least a mile
through
my own house going through that loop. And this is gonna sound strange because I did mention it in my other video. I've talked to you about it before. I felt like the running, I was literally trying to take off and levitate. Because there was a trip I had with Mark back in 2016. I felt like I was like going crazy for a minute. I looked at him and my wife and I was like, they could tell like something was frustrating me. They were like, what's wrong? I was like, I looked at them both dead serious and I was like, I know how to levitate, but I can't remember how. And they were like, what? I was like, yeah, I know how to levitate, but I can't remember how. And, when I'm sober, I always kind of think that's a silly idea because, you can't break the laws of physics. But there's been so many trips, I get into a trip, and it's like I'm trying to remember how to do it. And sometimes in the trip, it's almost like I've convinced myself that I'm going to do it eventually. And I don't know if I ever will, but it's definitely funny to think about from time to time. Like, to me, if I do it, that's a miracle. And if I can do it, then that means even the laws of physics we've been told we've been lied to about. This last trip, I feel like I was chanting and making so many noises too, because it's like the idea got in my head that somehow I've got to make a loud noise, and those sound waves will help hold me up off the ground.
I mean, theoretically, there has been proven that sound can make things levitate. So, like, you know,
I think the levitation thing might be nonsense.
It's
but
also
I'm always going to leave that door open.
It's also an interesting thought, though, because like it can be up for interpretation. So it can be literal, like literal levitation,
or mental or conscious,
or like mental or conscious, or even like sometimes when the trance happens, right? Because I've only gotten into that trance once at home, like so when I've tripped alone, and getting in that trance, I was like spinning around the room. I was in the trance. The whole room started going away, and it's like the room started being replaced with like a DMT space room. Like,
quick question: is there ever a point when you were in your trance at home that it felt like the room tilted sideways, and when you were spinning, you were like spinning on a wall?
Something like that, like angles. Like before, like the room switched, because it's like I would spin. I got caught into spinning too much. Where like you know, like, if you just spin sober, things can get blurred. Like and you look at the world's kind of blurry if you're just spinning. So like, eventually I got caught into spinning so much that like it's like the room started being replaced with like a DMT space room. Like I started leaving the room, and that's when it felt like I was it felt like I was levitating out, like up and out into that room. Like how I say, like, LSD is like DMT space dripping into this world or something. But it's literally like while I was in that trance spinning, it's like I was going up into that world. So it felt like I was levitating and I could feel it. And like even dancing around here in the trip we had, I can feel that thing starting, like that. I wasn't in it like I was when I was home, like in that trance, but like you could still feel the thing where you start to feel lighter and lighter and lighter, and like just you start. Maybe it's just because you're letting go of your body, you're not really thinking about the body, anyways.
I think that's why I was able to run around for like 3 straight hours. I had just like completely let go, and my body felt light as a feather. I remember there was a point too, as I kept coming through the loop, like you and Erica were talking about stuff, and I'd either run through and stay silent, or there was something you guys were talking about that I would hear, and I'd run through and just go, "Yup, yup, yup." It was like whatever you guys were talking about, like this higher self that I refer to would hear it, and I was saying "yep" to like alert you guys to, that's a right idea. Keep talking about it. Like you're onto something. Yep. When you were talking about angles too, imagine like when I'm running around, spinning around, when it feels like the room gets like angled, it feels like I'm almost stepping into like 4th dimensional territory. Like the room angles because I'm viewing it from something outside of just a 3rd dimensional perspective. Right. And maybe that's why my brain has a hard time making sense of it.
Right, because some of it can't be really Englished, because like it's beyond, like English is, or all languages are a 3rd dimensional creation. So it's like trying to explain a 4th dimensional or higher dimensional thing with a lower dimensional thing. It just loses certain things, certain things of the experience. Because like even though we're explaining the experience, it's like, man, it was so much more. Yeah. It's like words
don't do it.
Right.
So one thing that might do it is I want to find a way to hook up some cameras in here sometime.
My God, that'd be dope.
And do a reenactment of the trance. And that way maybe you guys could see from a different perspective, an outside perspective from my own body, see what I'm going through. And, you know, to warn you, I'm sure I probably look like a lunatic, like a raving lunatic that should probably be in a mental ward.
Bro, I've thought something like if somebody was here tripping, like, or even sober, but if they were tripping with us, they'd be traumatized for life. And like just a normal person would think, he's lost his mind. We
Yep.
should probably call someone. Like we should probably. They would be like they need to alert for help or something.
Mm-hmm.
When like I just seen it, I was like, okay, no, he's just going into the thing.
He's doing his thing.
Yep.
Shit, what was I gonna add to that? Actually, we do have on video
Oh my God, yes,
Us-
we do.
us kind of in this trance from, I believe it was either 2017 or 2018. There was a trip that him and I have always just referred to as the isness trip. Like we went
Yep.
into the isness of what is, and we're
In that
we're spinning around this room. Now, mind you, again, this was 6 years ago, so we were still trying to figure out, what the fuck this trance was even.
right.
But in the video, and again, we'll probably look like crazy people if I ever upload it. We're speaking to each other in a different language, and it's just complete gibberish.
Speaking in the light language, but like, bro, we was so in it that like that was one of the most I've been in the
Mhm.
thing. Like I don't know how to explain it, but that was so.
But yeah, even though we weren't speaking English, we
We
both
understood
fully
each other.
understood each other, and were communicating in this gibberish, light language, non-human language.
Right. It's
know-
interesting that this thing happens though, like that was years ago, and then it's like, well, we tripped years later, and like yeah, like same people but different people, like
Mhm.
but like the trance still happened type shit.
But it's so much more controlled now, because I definitely
Because we understand more. We have we're older.
I definitely did lose it a little bit that night, because I remember as I started coming down, I was a little confused. I was like, oh my God, what happened? Where like now it happens, it's like I'm more conscious of being in the experience.
Mm.
I still have to completely let go and not try to do anything to control it. But it was like in the past, I would like let go but not be conscious of what I was doing.
So you'd completely let go to it to the point where you'd wake out of it like, what the fuck happened?
It's either that or there was something in my mind that was almost trying to fight it or control it. And because of that, I would like black out and like not be conscious of what I was doing. Where it's like now I let go to it. Like in my video earlier, I said, the paradox of surrendering control has given me more control.
Right.
Where it's like now I don't try to control it. Like I just let it control me.
Yeah.
And I think I want to like talk about this so much is I'm interested if there's anybody else out there that trips on L that goes through anything like this or anything similar. Or I'm also wondering too how many people have gone into a really bad anxious trip because they felt this but then didn't get up and start dancing around with it. They just
right.
they thought it would be weird to dance around or to start chanting or oming or doing anything else. Because like I said, like in the past, if I would feel that thing pulling me and I didn't give into it and go with it, I'd feel anxious. My body would even feel uncomfortable, almost as if like something hurts, like it was hurting me to not do it. And I don't know if it's my higher self pulling me to say, hey, let's go, you got to do this healing. Because, there's one thing I've come to the conclusion of that, like, healing possibly never ends. We have to keep
Right,
healing
it's a constant,
ourselves in life.
Yeah, look at it like it's a constant thing. Like healing is very similar to like working out, right? If someone's like, okay, I'm in shape, and then it's like, if you think you never have to work out again just because you're in shape, that means you'll be out of shape. I think healing's a very similar thing where it's like, you can technically be healed, but then if you do nothing after that moment, you might get unhealed. So it's like a process that we kind of got to keep up with type shit.
I think that's why I go on my daily walks too, because it's like that's like my quick daily healing. Like in my last video, I said, I've had trouble letting go of things. That life path number 9, their biggest lesson is to let go. And sometimes I do hold on to like things from work from the night before. I'm like, oh, fuck that place and this bullshit, So it's like getting up and going for that daily walk. That's just like that small little bit of healing daily that'll help.
Right.
Um,
And that's really what it is, finding out what practices work for you. Because it kind of goes back to, like, with the tripping thing, we can, like, really anyone can have these realizations, but then if you do nothing about the realization afterwards, it's like it's not going to, like, be applied to you or, like,
guilty as charged, man. I sometime after like 2018 going into 2019, for like 6 years I fell into a darker place in my mind. And I think part of it has to do with I was neglecting everything I had learned on my trips, my philosophies, stuff like that. And it's almost like I started to believe for a little bit like, oh, this is all just nonsense. I'm just delusional. That false ego
Mm.
creeping in. And like I was only tripping like once, maybe twice a year from 2018 up until last year. I think I had 4 or 5 trips. And now it's like as I trip more, it's a lot easier to, in my day-to-day life, live by the philosophies that the psychedelics have taught me. I started going to therapy too in 2000. I think it was 2018, the end of 2018. Talked to my therapist about a lot of things, and I'm not saying I have any mental illness, but there's definitely some mental struggles in my mind that can bring anxiety and depression into my life. And to me, the greatest medicine that I've been able to take for this is LSD. I feel like if I take it once a month or once every other month, it just helps what's ever going on in my mind to completely clear. I've always had like identity struggles too, with like feeling centered in my identity and who I am. And the more I trip, the more I feel centered in my earth identity. And how do I want to word this? Perhaps this is why we'll never see psychedelics as a viable tool for mental illness, because how are you going to make a lot of money on something that's, one, so cheap, and two, something, if you're macro dosing and it works for a month or works for 2 months, you're only taking it once a month or once every other month. Or like even if they were to microdose it, it'd be even cheaper, and you're only doing it like 3 times a week. I don't microdose. I definitely prefer my macro doses. I do want to try some microdosing soon and see how it helps.
I've
But
really I've found that they're completely different, and I like the idea of microdosing, but I don't like it if you've never like macrodosed.
hmm
Like if you've never actually had a real trip, then like I'm iffy about it. But like I've microdosed. I feel like I've microdosed about 3 years ago. I tried it like probably for about a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe. And it was great. I feel like it helped. I used it, I guess, for a different reason than someone else would, because like for me, it just really helped embody the thing because I was obviously on the thing more,
hmm
and not enough to be in full trips, but like just enough where the mind can be in a familiar spot that it was when it had these revelations or whatever the fuck.
hmm
So it's like these revelations, oh, I need to get my shit right. I need to change my mindset. I need to I was working on my mental health really bad cuz like I was self-harming, and there was just so much shit I was working on where it was like the microdose just kind of helped keep me reminded of what I'm working on. Like, what am I actually doing? Because then sometimes it's like you'll have a trip and then you'll go back to, I guess you can call it just normal life.
hmm
So you just go back to normal life. I go back to getting the kid up for school and doing breakfast and
Normal
life,
routine,
and it's
and
just a normal routine.
there's a lot of distractions in life too that can make you forget about your trips and things you've
Right,
learned.
right. But that's just why I kind of like the microdose, because like it just helped. Even though I'm still doing these distractions, still doing I'm doing the normal life, I was reminded of this other work that I need to do in a
hmm
sense. So like some people just use microdoses for a different reason though. Some people use it to replace like something like Adderall,
hmm
which I can see that too though.
I mean, I've been prescribed Vyvanse and Adderall. I felt like the Adderall was a lot worse, strangely, even though they're very similar, because the
No, I could.
Vyvanse is the prodrug for dextroamphetamine, and the Adderall is a mixture of dextroamphetamine and levoamphetamine. So it's got 2 amphetamine salts. And I don't know, the Adderall did something to me way worse than the Vyvanse did. Like I can still get the prescription of Vyvanse whenever I want, but maybe throughout the summer, because I definitely trip a lot less in the summer because I can go out in nature and shit more. Um, Maybe I'll try microdosing more in the summer
Uh,
when it warms up, when I do my macro doses less. Be interesting.
right. I have noticed though that it does interfere with like tolerance, can happen. So it's like one
Hmm.
of those things where it's like, I would either have to, if I wanted a real macro dose, then I might have to stop microdosing for a week or two. But like,
Oh yeah, this year too. It's switched from like 2019 up until this year. It was just one hit or two at most. And now, similarly to the way Terrence McKenna talks about DMT, always take the third hit. That's become a staple of my LSD trips. Always take the third hit. Recently, it's been 3 hits every time. And I used to have a fear of taking 3 hits because I was afraid of losing touch with reality, as I've done multiple times on. I mean, it happened to me once on 2 hits. And I'm still trying to figure out what that me losing complete touch was. And I am relating it to like running from something, which is probably just running from myself or what I'm here on the planet to do, and I didn't want to face it. But yeah, recently my 3 hit trips have just been phenomenal, and especially after September 21st, because the way we were doing it earlier in the year, my wife and I would take 2 hits, we would wait an hour and take the third, and I don't think the third hit did a whole lot, waiting an hour and then taking it. I feel like if anything, it just prolonged the experience. So September 21st, for my wife and I's anniversary, and we had our other friend with us, that was the first time we took 3 right at once, and there was no hesitation, nothing. It's almost like it diminished the false ego enough for me to just get right into it. So there wasn't even any fear. It's like I was tripping hard enough to where, okay, I can't be afraid of this. I got to go right with it. Where it's like maybe with the 2 hits or the one in the past, it's like I was still fighting going into it. Like the false ego was still overpowering it and not allowing me to go into it. Because maybe the next video I make will be the one revelation I had on the September 21st trip. Because our buddy, he who will not be named as of right now, he was laughing about it because I was like, not yelling at myself, but being very stern with myself about what I was saying. Again, it was like my higher self was talking through me to me. So, but that's for another video.
the way you just described that, so like it had me think about something that I've never really thought about. So like, so because the trance happens to you like so often type shit, because to me it's only happened to me once out of like, I mean, probably like 100 LSD trips or more. It's only happened once, so it's unlikely to happen to me. Like the only time it happened was when I took an edible. So like I took an edible and with the LSD, so I took them both together,
Interesting.
and that's what caused me to get into the
Definitely
trance.
interesting because this last one, it was the
It was the
dad
cannabis that
shot me
put you into
it.
it too, right?
We've
right.
kind of got into it 2 other times. Once with the Isness trip, and then in this trip with me.
Right, okay,
so.
yeah. But like tripping alone, it's
Mhm.
only happened like once. So I never think about it. So like sometimes I'll take 5. I mean, sometimes I've taken 8 hits at once. And trips like that, it's just it's getting more DMT like, I guess for me. Like LSD is different cuz it's like it stretches the mind out like a fucking rubber band. It'll like stretch it out, then it brings it back. Then it stretches it out, then it brings, and so like on the higher doses that happens a little more. So but like I'll just tend to just lay on my bed and just stare at the ceiling at the higher doses and just kind of let go to the thing, let go to it. But it's interesting because I've never thought about how when you take L, right, you have the thought of, well, you could get into the trance. So like when I would take it, that thought never crosses my mind because it only happened once. So like the only time it kind of happened that was different, that again was on Hawaiian Baby Woodrow seeds. I took Hawaiian Baby Woodrow seeds like probably like 3 years ago now. And then taking Hawaiian Baby Woodrow seeds, it was like I almost walked out of my house naked, butt ass naked, because I'm like in this trance like state and like.
I mean, you know my grassroots story.
I
I did get butt naked at a festival when I got into this trance and started running around and was like trying to start a revolution. Had the right energy behind a revolution, just the wrong idea.
Uh,
Yeah, so with me, like when I first started getting into these trances, it like started off just one trip, and
well, that was my other that's a question I wanted to ask is, has it always happened?
no, it still doesn't happen every single trip, but
But it happens often,
it's been
though,
happening
too.
more and more frequently. It's like it used to happen like once a year, and then it was like twice a year, and then as I've started tripping more recently, and it's like as I've gotten older, wiser, more conscious, especially over this last year, uh, remembering all my past trips and things I've learned, it's like now it's happening more and more. I want to say over the last year, 2023 and 2024, since I started tripping more again, there maybe only be like 2 trips where I didn't get into it at some point in time. I had an alone trip earlier this year. I think it was either the March 21st trip. Yeah, I think it was the March 21st trip because I'm pretty sure Erica tripped with me on Bicycle Day this year. But the one trip I was alone, Erica didn't trip with me. She just stayed upstairs, drank some wine, enjoyed herself, and ended up coming down anyways while I was in the trip. And she felt like she was bothering me, but I was like, nah, dude, you're my wife. I love talking to you. Like, you're not bothering me at all. Like, you've just officially become part of my trip. Like, I'm just flowing with the trip.
Right.
And it's like getting near the end of the plateau where there was maybe only like an hour left. She was finally tired and went upstairs to go to bed. And it's like as soon as she went upstairs and went to bed, that's when the trance came. It was like, okay, you got to talk to your wife and enjoy things with your wife. Time to get up and dance.
Mm.
And that was actually the first trip where I felt like I was levitating in here. Because I got to a point where I was spinning straight like this. And I even put my arms up in the air.
Word.
And again, I'm sure I wasn't levitating, but it felt like I was when I was spinning in place. I also mentioned, too, in my video I recorded earlier, it's called the Hopf vibration. I think I've brought it up to you before. And I'm glad I'm bringing it back up because I stopped looking into it for a little bit. I think it was Eric Weinstein that I heard talking about it. And it's like a torus within a torus within a torus that opens up into multiple layers. And that's the thing we've always talked about. And
the thing we was talking about,
the spinning thing, yeah.
Yep.
And if I'm remembering correctly, I'm pretty sure he said all things in physical existence somehow come out of this Hopf vibration. So I'm glad I'm talking about it again, so it'll give me some YouTube videos to look into here recently.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that too, because like I totally forgot about that thing. But
Yeah.
that thing intrigued me because I remember, I don't know, was it the September 21st trip? I don't know what trip, but when we was talking about it and how like it'd be like this perfect infinite energy thing,
Mhm.
like.
And also too, I feel like the dance that I start to do, because the dance
It's connected. It's like it's connected to
the
that
dance
thing.
always starts off wide around the room, and then it's like it comes in tighter and tighter. So it's like the outside of this Hopf vibration torus thing, and then it's like it's the next layer in, then the next layer, and then all of a sudden into like the very center layer where I'm just like spinning straight. And then all of a sudden I'll start to spin out of it, go back around. And it's like as I go around it too, there's always something dealing with time where like it's like I see my past, present, and future all happening at the same time when I'm in some of these trances.
Right. Time completely blends together.
Yeah, it's like I'm looking at my life outside of the perspective of time, and even though I can see my present moment, my past, and my future, I also see that it's all just happening now.
Yeah.
Like all of it is somehow right now,
Yep.
and it's a very hard concept to understand, but that's all I've got.
I've been in that. I've been in that same type thing, and it's weird because it's like being in a like having a conscious awareness of that,
Mm-hmm.
but like not necessarily being able to bring it back, because like we're in time now and we can say, hey, yeah, so there was this moment in the trip where all time blended together, and then and that like, but it's like that's a moment that like I've experienced it, you've experienced it, and it's like it gives this crazy realization of like just time in general.
The infinite now.
Right, that there really is only now. And
I mean, there's been times in the past where I've come out of the trance and I've been like confused, almost like trying to remember who I am, where I am,
I've had
like
trips
where
like that. Well, not on LSD, but
like where in the universe I am and where in time
right.
I am. There's even been times I've had the idea that I've come out of that trance and somehow shifted myself to a different timeline.
Mm.
And the idea is like, imagine there's a bunch of different timelines and possibilities for my life, and whatever vibration I'm in internally decides which one of these timelines I'm going to be living in. Like, there are all these possibilities for my life. And it's like, there's been times I feel like I've watched myself pop out of one of those timelines and then pop back into a different timeline.
Mm.
And when those trips have happened, it literally feels like my life has changed. Like, where I've felt like I've been on kind of a negative path. And then when I feel like I've come out of that timeline into a different timeline, everything just seems to be better. Work seems to be better. My relationships with people seem to be better. So it's very interesting.
I feel you on that. And it reminds me of the first salvia trip I had, or the first trip I had in general, where like there was many different versions of me, and I couldn't figure out which me or which timeline was me, like which one was really the real me. And it was like the first time I ever really thought about timelines. But it also reminds me of this TikTok theory, about how like there was this theory a while ago when the CERN Hadron Collider was turned on,
Mm-hmm.
and how they say when it turns on, we're gonna switch into a new timeline, and like the idea though is really interesting that like timelines in general, that there could
Mm-hmm.
be timelines that we switch off from. So it's like it would be like, well, everything is determined, but it's also free will, because like we're also like we're switching through this thing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and it also makes it think, well, manifestation, it's a complicated thing, because like would it be you are actually manifesting the thing, or is it that you're just now vibrating at a frequency that puts you in the place where you had that thing?
Like, the thing's already manifested, but now you're
Right,
operating at the right vibrational frequency to actually walk into the thing that's already
right,
manifested.
right.
Have you ever seen the Loki series?
No.
So this Marvel series about Loki, they talk about different timelines and stuff. And it's very interesting. I haven't seen it since it first came out, so maybe I should go back and watch it now that we're talking about this, and how like
Everyone
there's
tells me I should watch that and the Doctor Strange movie, because they say that it'd be right down my
yeah,
alley.
Doctor Strange for sure would be down your alley. Absolutely. But yeah, the Loki one got me thinking about different timelines, and is there different me's and different timelines? Like, I had the one trip in 2012 where when I woke up the next day, I actually thought I died.
Mm.
And I was confused why I was back on planet Earth, because I thought I had died and gone to heaven and I was okay with it. And that was the trip I was screaming out of love. And my roommate was like freaking out that the cops were going to come. So he force fed me 2 milligrams of Xanax. And I think I passed out before the trip was over.
Mm.
And like, I had thought I died and went to heaven. And I was super confused when I woke up the next morning. And I've had the thought that in that timeline, I died, because we had actually taken 2 hits of 25C N-Bohm and 2 hits of 25I N-Bohm all at the same time. Very dangerous. I don't ever condone it. And I very well could have died. It was very stupid of me to take the high dose of each of those and then mix them together for a much higher dose. I'll make videos about that in the future. But yeah, I definitely stay away from N-Bohms. They can be pretty unpredictable.
Never tried an M-bomb before.
I
Eric
love
said
the
they would.
experience,
I was supposed to.
but
Eric said it was great.
yeah, but physically they can be
Right.
very
Yeah, I
unpredictable.
know.
And for me, I just don't want the physical feelings to manifest in the way they did. But like, yeah, I've thought many times that I died in that timeline and my friends and family mourned my death, and that all I did was simply just end up in this timeline.
Mm.
Was there anything else we wanted to talk about from the trip? I think we covered a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much can happen in a trip. Sometimes it's
Right.
hard to even talk about all of it.
Right. Because then as soon as we turn the cameras off, turn the mic, I'm like, oh
We'll
shit, we
remember
should have
something,
talked
yep.
about that. Yep.
Yeah, so I think we can cut it. It looks like we're over an hour.
Hey.
That hour went by quickly.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, I hope you guys liked the video. If there's anybody else out there that's watching this that gets into strange trances when they trip, whether it's on L, mescaline, DMT, mushrooms, anything.
Feel free to let us know in the
Yeah,
comments.
Please,
you know?
please let me know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. If
Mark,
if you're not already subscribed to any of his channels, I'll let you tell you what his channels
I was
are real
about to
quick.
say, Mark Dreams Trip Reports and Mark Dreams Philosophy are the two YouTube channels, and Mark Dreams 25, one word on everything else.
Yeah, and hopefully here soon I'll get possibly get an Instagram, maybe do my own Facebook page of Psyched Sessions, possibly a TikTok.
I mean, if you need me to, I could run the TikTok
Yeah.
for Psych
Well,
Sessions,
I
because I
thought about,
definitely think that it'd just be good to like put the clips everywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
well, I thought about if I do TikTok, I'm gonna get like a cheap $100 smartphone through Straight Talk from Walmart and do a different email and everything, just
Right.
so it doesn't have any of my other information.
Right.
And that way I can, put the shorts out there, because I definitely think a lot of people would find some of the psychedelic experiences we've had to be interesting.
Yeah.
I think the
because
psychedelic.
they're so different
Mhm.
compared to like what I normally hear. Like, which if you look up a normal trip report at LSD,
Mhm.
it's usually never too deep necessarily. You know?
Mhm. That's another thing I want to do on this channel is just read trip reports from Arrowwood for people.
Oh, that'd be dope.
Yeah, find some good ones, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
I want to have a bunch of different guests on here, even people that have had bad trips, and I want to talk to them about their bad trips and see if maybe we can figure out why they had a bad trip. Because I've had some rough experiences, but nothing I would ever call a bad trip.
Right. It can get rough, but like, you know.
Yeah. So, thank you guys for tuning in. Whoever watches this, appreciate it. Again, like, share, subscribe. Go check out Mark Dreams channels. And yeah, we'll catch you next time.
Peace out.
Peace
everybody.
out.